Hello and welcome to this donor appreciation event hosted by Friends of Park County. Matt and Sarah Skoglund are first-generation ranchers who left Chicago to transform 2,500 acres in the north end of the Shields Valley into North Bridger Bison, a grass-fed, field-harvested bison operation run with a rare level of care for the land, water, and wildlife. Their ranch became the first Audubon-certified bison ranch in the country, supporting sage grouse, sandhill cranes, pronghorn, and pollinators on native sagebrush meadows that could easily have been lost to subdivisions and ranchettes. Please join us in welcoming Matt Skoglund to learn more about an example of how the Shields Valley can grow while still protecting what makes it worth protecting. Thank you for being here this evening.
All right. Well, Eleanor, thank you so much. That was a really kind introduction. I really appreciate that. And thank all of you for being here. And I appreciate the invitation to come and talk to you about our ranch and what we're doing. And thanks for that food's amazing. So really nice spread. So so Eleanor and Barb and Kathy, we met and they asked me to pretty much just tell my story because it's a non-traditional path into ranching. So tell my story of how and why we started the ranch, and then what we do and why we do it, and then definitely looking forward to opening it up for questions. As Eleanor said, my name is Matt Skoglund, and my wife, kids, and I, we started North Bridger Bison, our ranch up in the Shields Valley from scratch 8 years ago. And the Red Star, so if you ever go on 86, west of Wilsall, north of Bridger Bowl, there's this unforgettable 90-degree turn to the east, and we're north, all the land north of that. And then this is the crew. It's myself, Sarah, our kids, Otto and Greta, and then Ed the bird dog, Sally the ranch dog, Walter, the world's laziest cat. So I'm born and raised outside Chicago, zero background in agriculture whatsoever. Just kind of had a classic Midwestern upbringing, the middle of three boys. But ever since I was a little kid, my earliest memories, just always loved nature and the outdoors. And then I became a serious hockey player and ended up leaving high school for hockey. And I went to Middlebury College in Vermont and played hockey there. And it was a very, very, very significant impact on my life because one, it was the first time living in a real rural area. And by playing hockey there, you spend a lot of time on campus when the college is closed. And I got to know a lot of people in town. Was introduced to hunting in college, which changed the way I look at the world. And in high school and college, I fell hard for the Northern Rockies and Montana and started to care a lot about the environment. And so I took a year off in between after college, but then I went to law school. And I obviously haven't aged a day since. But I went to law school really for two reasons. One, very pragmatic, that I had this dream of living in Montana, but I was like, how can I make it work financially? And I was like, well, every town needs a lawyer. So that was one reason. And the other was a dream of being an environmental lawyer. Just started to care a lot about conservation, biodiversity, the natural world. And so after law school, I went to Chicago for 3 years, which I knew wasn't for me long term, but it was a good place to start. And then 18 years ago, so 2008, my wife Sarah and I were getting married, and we just felt this now or never. Like if we don't move to Montana right now, it's never going to happen. We buy an apartment, you have a kid, life gets complicated. So we quit our jobs, moved to Bozeman. Everyone thought we were batshit crazy, and but we saw, we wanted to live in Montana, close to nature, immediate access to the outdoors, and I wanted to do environmental work out here. And I ended up getting a dream job doing environmental policy work for the NRDC. And the first 5 years was here in Livingston. I worked up above Saxon Friar. and then we moved the office to Bozeman in 2013. It was a great experience, and I have a lot of respect for the different environmental organizations, and then there's some folks here tonight that work for them. But after I was there for 10 years, and just after a while, just felt a calling to do something else. And there were a few books that were very impactful for me. One, Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia, he's a hero of mine. I mean, he uses Patagonia to make the world a better place. And in my time at NRDC, it became very clear to me that if we're going to protect the natural world, as important as environmental groups are, a $50 donation to the Sierra Club is not going to save the earth. It's going to be through the business world and how we produce things and how we consume things. I've always loved land, and Aldo Leopold's a huge hero of mine. I've been to his farm and shack in Wisconsin. And so I just was craving to do something in leave the nonprofit world, go into the for-profit world with a focus on conservation and something that was land-based, something that you could smell, touch, feel. And in 2017, because I worked on and when I was at NRDC, the big issue I worked on was around bison, so particularly bison management in and around Yellowstone National Park. And so I had a Google alert for Yellowstone bison. And in 2017, there was an article about the National Bison Association having their summer conference in Big Sky, and then they did something at Ted Turner's Flying D Ranch. And in the article, it said that the bison industry, the meat industry, it was growing, and they were looking for more producers. And I read the article, and I was like, God, that sounds so cool. Clearly not for me as a kid from Chicago, but for somebody, that's going to be awesome. And I went about my day. And then weeks later, it was still just like kicking around my brain. I was like, I feel like there might be something there. But each to his or her own. But for me, like giving bison a great life on a ranch and then shipping them to slaughter, which because bison haven't been domesticated, it's super high stress for them. I just didn't have any interest in that. And then I read Buffalo for the Broken Heart by Dan O'Brien, who's another huge hero of mine. He started Wild Idea Buffalo in South Dakota. And in that book, I learned about the modern day field harvesting of bison, which I'll talk more about later, but you're just reversing that process. And instead of shipping animals to slaughter, you just drive out wherever the animals are that day, and it's a headshot from a rifle with a copper bullet from like 10 to 15 yards, as ethical and humane as it gets for food, not just meat, but food. And I was like, all right, it was an instant light bulb moment. I was like, it's time to get serious. And then, it was, late 2017. What do? You go to Google. And so I typed in, I knew that I knew absolutely nothing. And so I typed in bison ranching consultant, and this guy, Roland Cruz, popped up, who's a regenerative ranching expert in Bozeman. And he's worked primarily with cattle ranches all over the West and some bison producers. And we met for lunch in Bozeman, January of 2018. I was telling him my story, and he cut me off, and he's like, you should come. I teach a holistic management workshop on a bison ranch, and you should come. And I took it in two ways. As one, like this would be very beneficial for you, and two, it was a test. Like, are you a dreamer or are you serious? And I went home, talked to my wife. When you work at an organization like that, your vacation time is very precious. And she was like, you gotta go. So I went, and I came back just all excited, joined the National Bison Association, and Sarah was all in, but she was like, at that point, our kids, Greta had just turned 1, Otto was like 4.5, and Sarah was like, no offense to the rest of the world, but like, it's gotta be within an hour of Bozeman. Like, this is where our community is, our kids, we're not starting over. And so I started looking for land, and the dream died very, very quickly. But I'm a stubborn, persistent person, and I kept searching and searching. And then I came across these few parcels up on the west side of the Shields Valley in the Sedan area, which was if we could have waved a magic wand, that would have been our first choice, because it's, 30 miles from Bozeman, not too far from Livingston. And so it feels far away from these places, but but it's hardcore ranching country. It's real ag country. So you're not, at that time, you weren't too worried about subdivision and development, although that's changed. And so I took our two kids out there on a Saturday and in March, and the price was super low, even for 2018. And I thought there was going to be like a flaming toxic landfill or something in the middle. And I was like, well, this is amazing. And got home that night and I said, Sarah, you got to come with us next weekend. We got to go look at this. And we just kept, and I did my due diligence. Like I kept looking online to see if there was another piece of property that made more sense, whether geographically or financially. And nothing even merited a visit. Like this is the only land we looked at. And then by late May of 2018, we put a business plan together, and like we could see us doing this. And I felt like if we didn't get this land under contract, all that work would go up on the shelf. And the way Bozeman was going, I was like, that it's not going to come off the shelf. And I mean, no one could have foreseen COVID or the Kevin Costner Yellowstone TV show. And so by late May, we were like, let's get it under contract with as long a closing date as possible. So we did that. And then that summer went into sponge mode, just tried to absorb and learn as much as possible, and got to tour multiple bison ranches, including Ted Turner's Snowcrest Ranch in the Upper Ruby. And I still had this like pretty big insecurity where I just felt like there was something someone wasn't telling me, because I felt like if you didn't grow up ranching, you couldn't be a rancher. And then I met a couple guys who, like me, had no background in agriculture. They were in the bison ranching world, and they were very generous. And they were like, look, you're going to make mistakes. Like there's no doubt about it. But not having a background in agriculture, there are some real advantages there. The biggest ones being you have no bad habits to unlearn, and there are no pressures on you from your parents or the in-laws or what have you. And so like my last name is Skoglund, and I always joke like this is the Skoglund way of ranching. It's the only way we do it. And so it was very liberating. It was like, what's best for the animal, the land, and the business? Let's do that. And so I was still waiting for someone to like take me for a walk around the block and be like, so here's what they're not telling you. Never happened. And we were able to get financing. We closed in September. And in January of 2019, the bison arrived. Those are the crazies in the background. And so here we are, May 2026. I could do a whole different talk about burning a truck to the ground, horrifically breaking my ankle, the bison getting out, like I've made lots of mistakes. There's lots of war stories. I always tell people, like, if you think this life is just, our family on the porch, Sarah bringing a fresh apple pie, the kids singing folk songs, like, no, like, it's a ton of work. There are very hard days, but I love it deeply. And so as far as our management, like what we do at the ranch, we are ultimately all about biodiversity, and for two reasons. One, we're living through an extinction crisis, losing more and more biodiversity every single day, and so we want to push back in our own tiny way against that. And so we manage for biodiversity for the sake of biodiversity, full stop. And then second, the science is very clear. There's a great scientist from Utah State that retired to Ennis, Montana, Fred Provenza, and his science, hard science, has made it very clear that the more biodiverse your ranch is, the healthier and more resilient the animals are, and the healthier their meat is, and the healthier the people that eat their meat are. And so we get excited when we see a new bird species. Today I was out, I saw a bunch of giant bumblebees, like fills me up like I can't describe. And there's this great, we don't use any chemicals. There's a great regenerative farmer in Georgia named Will Harris, White Oak Pastures. I'm sure some of you have heard of him. And he's got this like super thick Southern accent. And I love it when he talks about chemicals. He says, herbicide, pesticide, fungicide, all various forms of homicide. But he's right. Like in regenerative agriculture, the focus is on the soil. Everything starts in the soil. So if your soil is not healthy, you're ultimately, it's chemical farming, right? It's fertilizer, pesticide, herbicide, fungicide, all the things. So we focus on soil health and we manage it for biodiversity. We run our bison, it's one herd year round. We don't wean the bison. We don't sell live animals. We sell 100% direct to consumer. I field harvest all the bison. And so, the science is clear that the longer a calf is on mom, the healthier it'll be for the rest of its life. And weaning it's labor intensive, it's stressful on the animals, it's stressful on the people. And so I was like, well, why would we wean? That makes no sense. So we don't wean. We let moms take care of that. We run it, it's totally in sync with nature. So they breed on their own in July and August. Just like, very similar, I guess, identical to the bison in Yellowstone with a giant asterisk. I'm a wildlife nut. And so I'm I always make it very clear that our ranch is fenced. This is a managed environment. These are not wildlife, but they breed on their own during July and August, just like the bison in the park. They calve on their own in April and May. I was out there today. I saw a cow with afterbirth hanging out her backside. We've got, most of our calves have dropped, but we've still got them coming. And calving with bison, it's me driving around with binoculars going, oh, there's one, there's another one. And yeah, so we just I love this photo, seeing a cow moose walking through the sage. And then this one for me, really sums up what we do. And because a big part of that diversity and biodiversity is our grasses and plants. So bison are grazers, they eat grass, but right now when everything's popping, they'll nibble on dozens and dozens and dozens of species. And a quick anecdote that I read in Fred Provenz's book about diversity, he took a group of goats somewhere in the West, and then he split the goats into two herds. And one herd was on diverse pasture rangeland like we have in Park County. And then the other herd was on a monoculture of grass. So you could have killed them and marketed them as 100% grass-fed, grass-finished animals, but they're on a single species of grass for months. And then he released both herds back into diverse pasture where you have naturally occurring toxic plants like you have everywhere in the West. And a bunch of these goats died, and not one of these goats died. And it's basically the diversity that they were grazing on helped their rumen and their stomach and their gut tolerate the toxic plant. So I love this photo. You can just see all the grasses, wildflowers, and the science is also very clear. As a great scientist, Dr. Stefan Van Fleet, also at Utah State, they're studying the nutrient profile of meat. So whether it's beef or bison or what have you, and it's unequivocal, very, very clear that the more species of grasses and plants these animals eat, the better the nutritional profile of their meat. So they're getting, some vitamins, minerals from this grass and this plant. So we manage for biodiversity and diversity. So, and then as I was saying, we keep it very simple. We're really focused. We really preach excellence. We strive for excellence across the board. So we're not going to get spread thin, chasing a bunch of shiny objects all over the place. So we manage for biodiversity. We run it as one herd year round. We sell 100% direct to consumer. We don't sell live animals. We sell by the quarter, half whole bison, and you put a deposit down. And then when it's time I was supposed to field harvest 2 bison today. We work with Amsterdam Meat Shop west of Bozeman, and their coolers are too full, so they had to reschedule. But what a field harvest looks like is, if they hadn't canceled, I would have drove out to the herd this morning, and they know me, they know my truck. I always joke that they're like, idiot with the beard's here again. And then like I said, it's a headshot, 10 to 15 yards away. And I laugh because people sometimes will say, God, Matt, I love your ranch because the bison have this great life, and then only one bad day. And I'm like, no bad day. When I field harvest a bison, that animal, the last one I did, a 2-year-old bull that was conceived on the ranch, born on the ranch, lived his entire life on the ranch. He's out there with his herd, grass in his mouth, and then when I pull the trigger, it's instant. And the science is also clear that stress negatively impacts the quality of the meat. So we field harvest for the animals to give them a beautiful instant death and for the quality of the meat. So I kill the bison, I drop it, I lift it up with my bale bed, bleed it, take it to a different pasture, and then I gut it, save the tongue, cheeks, heart, liver, kidneys, hanging tender, get it back on the truck, drive to Amsterdam Meat Shop. They skin it, dry age it, and then they, wrap it, label it, box it, freeze it, and then for local customers in the Bozeman Livingston area, we deliver, and then we ship all over the country. This is what it looks like once it's about to go in for aging at Amsterdam. And then those are the bridgers in the background. That's me taking a photo. And so part of our mission is connecting people to where their food comes from. And so when I field harvest, I drive out and I take a picture of the herd. And then after I kill a bison, I take a picture of the dead bison. Never anything gory or bloody. Like I always make sure there's no blood, but very obvious, like that's a dead bison laying on the ground. And then at the butcher, take a photo. And then the next morning I'll email the customers and just give a little synopsis of the day and say, hey, I field harvested your bison yesterday. It was 19 below and freezing, or it was a gorgeous spring morning or whatever. And we can talk more about this, but I so deeply love ranching, whether it's bison, cattle, sheep, goats, you name it. Like I see the tangible ecological benefits that ranching provides and the open space it provides. And, ranching, I think, has been unfairly vilified in a lot of ways. So we're trying to demystify this whole thing and celebrate a beautiful life, a beautiful death, beautiful food, and connect our customers to where it comes from. And so then it comes packaged, ready for the freezer. It's beautiful meat. And as Eleanor said, to really hammer home that point of, we have a little phrase we coined when we started it called eat with your eyes wide open. And a whole nother talk would be like plant-based foods. I always joke, if you think a vegan burger, if you think nothing was killed in the manufacturing of that vegan burger, I have an oceanfront condo in St. Louis that you're going to want to take a look at. And so, we're all killing stuff with the food that we eat, the cars that we drive, the phones in our pocket. It's whether you choose to be aware of it or not. And no one's perfect. We are far from perfect with the 9-year-old and the 12-year-old. We eat plenty of pizza, mac and cheese. But I think if we can all just be a little more mindful about it, I think the world will be a better place. And so when we deliver, we include like a tote bag with some stickers, some cooking tips, a sprig of sagebrush with bison hair tied around it, and really try to provide like a great customer experience from start to finish. And one thing I didn't expect that's been really fun is I've become friends with a lot of our customers. I've never met them in person. Like they live in, wherever, Minneapolis or Atlanta, and they order a bison or a half bison or a quarter bison, and they've gotten to know our ranch and us, and we've talked on the phone. So that's been fun. So I'm gonna speed through the end. I got the warning from Barb, open it up for Q&A, but just a few other highlights. So our first ranch, we protected under a conservation easement, GVLT. It was super important. We talk a big game for conservation. Super important that we put our money where our mouth is. We protect it from development. And it's been interesting. It's another long story, but 22 years ago when I was in law school, I wrote my note, which is your thesis, on conservation easements. So I've been a conservation easement geek for 22 years. And I just think it's the most powerful way to protect land. And they're so landowner friendly. They're so win-win-win-win-win. And as someone who lives on a ranch that's protected under an easement, I can't tell you how much joy and satisfaction I get from it. Like there's so many times where I'm out there and just, I don't know, the sun's hitting the bridgers in a certain way. And I'm like, man, like long after I'm worm food, it's gonna look just like this. It just feels really good. And then, we became the first Audubon certified bird-friendly bison ranch in Montana. And then last summer, we'd been working on this for a couple years, but we expanded by almost 1,000 acres immediately to the east of us. And when Eleanor talked about the threat of ranchettes, it's very real. Like that's not an abstract thing. the letter from the realtor very, very, very clearly stated, if you can't get this across the finish line, we will subdivide this into ranchettes. So we felt we were over the moon to expand, protect that land, and we're already working with GVLT to put all of the new land under a conservation easement, which we think will finish next summer. And then with the expansion, there's a homestead over there. And I don't know if any of you know, is Hallie Rugheimer. It was her property. Hallie was this amazing, amazing woman. She was a hardcore conservationist, music lover, great neighbor and friend. She passed away a couple years ago, but it was Hallie's place that we took over. So we moved into Hallie's house and we turned our old house into an Airbnb, just a simple way to generate some more revenue. Because we've taken a big swing and literally millions of dollars of debt, and we have to make the numbers work. I'm constantly saying, no margin, no mission. Like this has to work financially. And then this is Hallie's place where we live now, and she used to do weddings. So we're all about quality over quantity, but we're doing a couple weddings, dinners, board retreats, those sorts of things. We sell skulls. And I guess lastly, we've been fortunate, definitely didn't expect it, but we've gotten a lot of media attention. And I always laugh because the headline's always Chicago lawyer turned bison rancher. And I'm like, dude, what about the 10 years at NRDC? But I know it's a sexier story. So if you want to learn more about us, you can just Google North Bridger Bison, and there's articles and podcasts and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, bottom line is we love what we do. We're really passionate about it and thrilled to be here tonight to share it with you. And now I think Barb has questions and then Q&A. So thank you.